If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you have a wonderful pregnancy and afterbirth experience. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 22, where I am chatting to the lovely Rochelle Glendon from How to Live Slow. Today's episode is for you if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you've got a crazy to-do list, or perhaps you're craving doing less. But this episode's also for you if you are a pregnant or a new mama. So I am your host, Kath Bequee. I'm a mum of 3 young girls, a physiotherapist for women with 15 years experience, and I have an online community, Fitness Mama, which helps to provide pregnant and new mothers with exercises, support and resources they need to move from the overwhelm, the physical aches and pains of pregnancy, the weakness felt after birth, and instead we replace that with the comfort and confidence they need to get their bodies and minds strong again, so that you can get back to doing what you love with a bubba by your side, whether or not that's running around with the kids at the park or running the next marathon. But before diving into this great episode, there is something super exciting happening in the next few weeks. So 5 days, 5 ways to prepare for labour is a free 5-day event starting on Monday the 1st of March 2021. So this is the second time we will be holding this 5-day event. As last time we did it in November last year, there was a really amazing response and lovely feedback. So these 5 days, this free event will leave you feeling more confident and empowered about your upcoming childbirth experience. In these 5 days, you will learn about active birthing positions. So what are some positions you can use during the different stages of labour? You will learn about perineal massage, what perineal massage is, and how it might help to reduce your risk of perineal tears and episiotomy. But you'll also learn how to do it. You're going to learn about the TENS machine, which can be used for pain relief, as well as pelvic floor essentials to help with your pregnancy, birth, and afterbirth recovery. So as a women's health physiotherapist, everything I will be sharing in this free 5-day event are things that I believe every woman deserves to know when pregnant to really help with her childbirth and afterbirth experience. To register for this free event, before the doors close, head to fitnessmama.com/challenge. So the link is also in the show notes, but that's fitnessmama.com/challenge. Right, let's get into this episode. Rochelle, we've connected recently on Instagram, but I have to confess we haven't chatted too much, so could you please also introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Rochelle Glendon. I'm actually a certified life coach. I did my life coach training maybe 6 or 7 years ago before I even had kids. So in the meantime, my husband and I have had a couple of babies, got married and all of that stuff. So I used to work with women approaching 30, on that what the hell is happening to me? And now I work with mums on matrescence and slow living who are also asking the question, what the hell has just happened to me? So my business is How to Live Slow. I have a podcast as well. And I'm just really passionate in the ideas of slow living, the philosophy of slow living. So I'll explain a little bit more about what slow living is as we chat. But yes, that is me.
I was having a quick chat to a friend, after school drop off. We have our quick 5-minute window where we have our daily chat. I said, I'm doing a podcast with someone all about slow living and I don't know what the hell it is because I certainly don't live it myself. So I really need to have a chat to Rochelle because, I get so important in that early motherhood phase, which we'll talk about. And I just can see how it becomes important throughout your whole motherhood phase for so many different reasons. And I know personally I have to try to keep bringing myself and grounding myself, and it doesn't come naturally because I tend to run at a million miles an hour with the 3 kids. So it'll be great to chat today. So let's get started. What is slow living?
So slow living is actually, it's a philosophy that started in Italy, in Rome, in the 80s as the slow food movement. Essentially, McDonald's wanted to build a McDonald's in Rome, and the people of Rome were like really against the idea. They said, food's meant to be enjoyed. We don't want fast food. We want to sit with our friends, and there's a process you're supposed to go through with meals. Eating is not just about eating, it's about connecting with your loved ones. So they started the slow food movement, which has evolved into things like slow travel and slow cities. And there's a lot of people, you might have heard of Brooke McAlary. She has a podcast called Slow Your Home. She's been around for a long, long time. She's also got a book. And then there's people like Carl Honore, who wrote, what's the name of his book? It's all about slow living as well. And I've just taken those philosophies and my own experience as a mum and turned it into my own philosophy around slow living, which is all about understanding what are your priorities and are you actually living those? Like we all say, family is our number one priority, but are we making the time for that? Are we taking the time to rest? You know a lot about rest and the importance of rest, and it's got a really expanded view. So this is a really long version of what slow living is, but it's so opposite to the way that we all do live our lives, in that hustle, get to the end goal, achieve your dreams sort of thing. It's all about ditching the hustle basically and figuring out what's actually important to you. Yeah, so that's the basis of slow living.
And that was like one element of the lockdowns, was not having to rush around with all the after school activities and quickly drive from A to B to C. It was just amazing to be able to, well, not for such a long period, but it really did make you appreciate, or made me appreciate the slowness of life. It was actually an element I did enjoy, was not having to run around, and I felt my kids were more settled when they weren't having to put your shoes on. Where's your backpack? Have you got your school lunchbox? So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that is another element of it, is respecting our time and not overscheduling ourselves. So learning about how to say no and have those boundaries. But you can't do those things unless you understand what your actual priorities are. And that's what I really love about slow living, is like all of those things, like extracurricular activities and things. Like we feel like our kids are missing out if they don't do everything. But staying home and just playing together and building those family relationships, or, meeting the neighborhood kids and having a chance to actually be bored and be kids, that's important too. And on the weekend, when you've got a birthday party in the morning and then you've got soccer and then you've got another birthday party and then you've got to get to grandma's for dinner, you never actually get to be in all of those places. You're just thinking about when you have to leave. So that's, yeah.
I think last weekend we actually had a really, and I say in inverted commas, boring weekend. We had nothing organised. And I was a bit like itchy feet. But my oldest daughter said, "Mum, this is the best weekend ever." It was a really nice reminder that, you know what? We don't need to be rushing around. Let's just chill out at home and go for a walk with a dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Well, let's bring it back to pregnancy now and early motherhood. So, I've got a lot of views when it comes to the physical side of things, but why do you feel slow living is so important in that pregnancy and early motherhood phase?
Okay, let's talk about matrescence, because I think it's really important to mention that here. So matrescence is the process we go through as women when we become mothers. So if you think about, a child goes through adolescence to become an adult, a mother goes through matrescence when she becomes a mother. And there's a cascade. So I learnt this. I did some certification training with Amy Taylor-Kabaz. It's called Mama Rising. You might have heard of her. And she says it's a cascade. So you change on many levels. You change on a financial level, economic level, you change physically, you change mentally and emotionally, you change culturally, the views of a woman versus a mother. And we call that like the inner split, like when we feel stressed about the way we want to show up as a mum, but also what it means to be a successful woman and being in the workplace and that sort of thing. So from that point of view, I think slow living is really important because we need to immerse ourselves in that transformation and become a mother. we talk about baby brain, but that is literally your brain rewiring to become a mother, to be in tune with your baby. But if you're rushing around doing all the things, you haven't slowed down to tune into your baby, right? So slow living helps you to turn baby brain into motherhood intuition. I think that's really lovely, because when you are in tune with your baby, you know what's wrong just by the way that they're crying. And you also need to rest, right? You need to recover from having children. It's a period of huge emotional toll. It's a period of huge physical toll. You're sleep deprived. We know that not resting well is a key factor in anxiety. That is a huge risk for mums as well. I suffered personally from separation anxiety. I couldn't sleep even when my babies were asleep because I was so on edge, making sure that they were okay and worried that they might be away from me. And slow living helps you to manage all of that. And also to reassess, what do I want from my working life now? What's actually important to me? And do I want to go back? And what does that look like? And how do I manage that? How do I manage going back to work and still being the mum I want to be?
So to put it really simply, it sounds like slow living sort of encompasses all the different elements of that phase. So your physical, the way you're thinking, the way you're moving, it's really interesting. It's not an easy simple definition, is it?
Not really.
Because it's such a broad definition. But then again, it's quite simple in its core.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. I do struggle to explain it simply because I feel like it's such a huge life-affecting thing, right? It's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And it's something that is so foreign to so many of us. It is hard to articulate in a way that appeals and applies to every situation. But from your perspective, what would you say it's important in terms of rest and recovery from a physical point of view?
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
Well, it's interesting what you were saying before, because I really resonated with that. I went from, I guess a lot of women go from working full-time, 9 till 5 or whatever it is, and going out in the evenings, out for dinners and socialising and exercising and all the rest. So a really full life, to suddenly I was on maternity leave and I didn't know what to do with myself for those 4 weeks. Like, the thought of just doing nothing was not in my mind. So being a women's health physio, I went and checked out all the different pregnancy workouts local to me. I loved it. But then it was a real shock with that first baby. That would probably have been one of my biggest surprises and biggest shocks, was just how everything has changed so much. And I know from a physical perspective, I didn't rest enough. And I developed symptoms, which I'm telling all my mums in the membership, if you develop these symptoms, you need to do less, you need to lie down. So I developed pelvic heaviness, which is a sign of prolapse, in those first couple of weeks after childbirth. And I was really shocked because I knew what that symptom was. And I was like, oh my gosh, but really I should not have been surprised, because I was walking around. I lived closer to the city back then, and I was taking my pram for walks and catching up with friends, cafe, and showing off my new baby, and I was doing too much. And then by the evening I felt this pelvic heaviness, and it was a bit of a shock to the system, and that really caused me to think, weight, I'm actually doing my body a disservice at the moment by doing too much in those early days. And I think with each baby that's come along, I've had 3 children now. It sounds like I'm going to have more. I've had 3 children, full stop. And with each baby that came along, I did less in that postnatal period. And as a result, I know I physically recovered so much better. Like my body's recovery was so much better with my second and especially my third, because when it came to my third, I had totally surrendered to the fact that those first 6 weeks, I'm not doing much because I can't. I've got 3 young little kids relying on me and I just physically couldn't handle them all out and about. So my recovery for my third, even though it was my third child, was actually the best. And that's when I started implementing more of the strategies that I teach in my online program. I actually did what I should have done and my recovery was tenfold better. So from a physical perspective, our pelvic floor muscles, if you think about a vaginal delivery, we know our pelvic floor muscles stretch up to 300% their length, 3 times their length. It's more than any other muscle in the body. Now, don't quote me, but I think the hamstring tears, like you get a hamstring strain at about 20% its length if it stretches, but the pelvic floor is about 300%. So it's got this amazing ability to stretch, which is amazing and remarkable, and we need that for the baby's head to descend. But I like to use the analogy, think of an elastic band that's been stretched. We want that natural recoil to occur as much as possible. And if we keep putting it on stretch, walking, lifting heavy things, standing with the weight of gravity pushing down, we don't give it that ability for that natural recoil to occur and that knitting together. So from a pelvic floor point of view, more rest is best to help with that recovery.
It took 9 months to stretch that much. So I'm assuming that it's not just a couple of days and it's back. Talking about bouncing back, what is the recommended period of actually resting and what sort of things can you start to do and how long should you wait to do anything?
Yeah, great question. I wonder where that term bouncing back came. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think different cultures do things so differently. I think some cultures, there's that notion of getting on with things. Let's move on, let's get on with life. Whereas other cultures, for the first 6 weeks, the mother doesn't leave the hut, for example, and all her food's brought to her, and that motherhood is really celebrated as a community. So I think some cultures do it really well, and our society in general perhaps could improve. So from that 6 weeks, I really consider that rest and recovery phase. So I just did a podcast episode on it recently, actually. I think my last podcast episode. There's a few key things that all women, whether or not they've had a vaginal delivery or a cesarean delivery, could be doing. I recommend all women don't lift anything heavier than their baby. It's not just if you've had a cesarean, but if you have a vaginal delivery too. It's tricky when you've got a toddler in the house, right? After cesarean, women are often told not to lift anything heavier than their newborn baby. And so they've been given the doctor's orders and they've had major abdominal surgery, and it is actually really important they don't lift anything heavier than their newborn baby. And I feel women that have had a cesarean are better at not lifting. They're told they can't drive. So immediately, if you're not allowed to drive, you're not getting out and about, seeing friends, you're not lifting a pram in and out the car, a capsule in and out the car. It doesn't do justice to the recovery of the body. So that's where I sometimes find vaginal deliveries, they're not given those explicit instructions by their doctor, and they can drive, which means they might be heaving a 10 kilogram heavier pram in and out the car, 15 kilogram capsule with a baby. So as a general rule of thumb, I actually do wonder whether women who have had a cesarean delivery heal better in those first 6 weeks because they rest more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually had a cesarean. And the same thing, I remember at the time the doctor said you can't drive for 6 weeks, don't lift anything, like all those things that you said. And it was like, right, the expert told me not to do this. I'm supposed to be the expert on my body. If I had a natural birth, I wouldn't have done those things. So I do remember at the time going, in a way, like I know it's major surgery, but at the same time, this has been great because like I actually can't go anywhere. And as frustrating as it is, I feel that I did have a great recovery and I had that bonding time with my baby. Other people could come to me instead of me, feeling obliged to take the baby around everywhere. So there are other obviously ongoing things like abdominal separation and not being, there's other things, not saying that cesarean's the easy way out, but from the point of view of a natural birth, women aren't told that, right? So it's like your body has bounced, like you expect it to bounce back quicker because nobody said not to do those things.
And there's no easy way out. Like, I'm not saying one delivery is easier than the other by any means, but you're right in terms of that notion of knowing what your body can do. I don't agree with in those first 3 months because you might feel amazing. I often hear women say, oh, I haven't had a tear. I don't have any abdominal muscle separation, so I'm fine to get back into everything. But really, at the end of the day, you could be the strongest woman in the world, but if you've had a vaginal delivery, and even if you've had a cesarean, your pelvic floor is still being stretched. And it's not just the muscles that we're talking about. We're talking about the fascia, the connective tissue, all those soft tissues. And that isn't a muscle strength issue. That just requires time for it to knit together. And it's just time that we need for the soft tissues to really heal. And sometimes it doesn't, you might feel amazing. And that's where sometimes you end up doing too much because you're feeling amazing.
Yes, exactly. And so I talk a lot about how there's exercise that depletes and then there's exercise that you can do that restores you. So I'm assuming that there are exercises you recommend that restore the pelvic floor before going hard on the other kinds of things, trying to go back to CrossFit at 6 weeks. I know some women do that, but I would hesitate to say that that's a good idea, even not being a physio.
Look, there's always these general guidelines, but at the end of the day, women do need to go to the healthcare professional and get assessed so that they can have that individual assessment and an individualized approach, because one size doesn't fit all. But having said that, as a general rule of thumb, I tend to recommend women allow a good 12 weeks before they get back into that higher impact work. But I don't even like to put a timeline on it, because for some women at 12 weeks, they might have built up their walking endurance and they might have been doing pelvic floor every day and they might be feeling quite strong, whereas for other women, they really haven't done much at all. So I like to think about it as a step-by-step process before you get back to CrossFit or before you get back to running, rather than just putting a time stamp on it.
And I assume that that goes for people who were already fit before pregnancy and who maintained fitness during pregnancy. Same applies, not recommended to.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what, those first 6 weeks, as we talked about, I do recommend it's that rest and recovery phase. So as much of small bursts of horizontal rest throughout the day. So it could be 2 minutes or 5 minutes, lie down on the couch at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just to take that pressure off your pelvic floor and abdominals, take the gravitational forces away. Like, it's amazing how beneficial a quick 5-minute lie down could be. And again, not lifting anything heavier than your baby for the first 6 weeks to allow that soft tissue healing. But really, soft tissue healing needs longer than 6 weeks. It needs a good 12 weeks. So between 6 to 12 weeks, I tend to encourage a gradual increase in the walking plan. And that's when you might want to start some gentle core exercises. And this is what I take all my mums through. Again, before you get back to CrossFit, what have you worked yourself up to doing? How long can you walk for? Can you run yet? How heavy are you lifting? What do you need to build on? How's your core? How's your abdominal muscle separation? So there's so many things to think about. Could talk all day.
Yeah, I know. It's really fascinating. Even just like choosing the right person to go back to train with, so that they are educated and up to date with like what you can and can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I developed Fitness Mama, because I just felt there's so many online programs out there that are developed by a personal trainer who suddenly had a baby and they release a postnatal program. But I do feel that there's not much in terms of quality step-by-step rehab programs, and that's exactly why I developed Fitness Mama. But having said that, I know that an online program doesn't suit everyone out there. So it is a matter of, if you want that face-to-face, finding out, What has your time slots available? You know, you don't want to be getting up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 for a workout in the morning. Can you take your baby along? What has the trainer done in terms of women's health? Do they have that women's health expertise? And I really would encourage you to find someone with that expertise in women's health. And I'd even go so far as saying, make sure they've got expertise in women's health, but also pelvic floor rehab. I see women months down the track where they've gotten into running and perhaps they just haven't done the rehab required, and that's when they might develop issues with prolapse or incontinence, leaking when they're running, or aches and pains. So there's heaps to be done in those early days. So we talked a lot about the physical side of slow living. If you could give 3 tips for women to incorporate slow living into their daily life, how would you recommend it from your perspective?
I feel like it's an awareness thing. So the first one that I would say is that we tend to live like we're mobile phones and we charge ourselves up to 100% every night, and we expect to wake up every morning with 100% energy. And that's just not the case, right? So...
And you die if you're only 50% energy. You think, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through the day?
So my first tip would be to learn your energy cycles and understand that there are going to be days that you're going to wake up not 100% energy, and that might be because of your hormonal cycle or whatever. So getting in tune with that and then not overcommitting. So knowing that there are going to be days where you can't do a million things. So be realistic about what you can actually achieve in a given day. I would say that it's more about managing your time and respecting your own time. So that's kind of a very big tip. So to do that, it's acknowledging that you don't have 100% energy every day. So choosing to just do 1, maybe 2 things a day in terms of like leaving the house or having things scheduled in for, you know, catch-ups or whatever, particularly when you're on maternity leave.
I think this is what I really struggled with my first baby, because a lot of my friends hadn't had babies yet. And I remember thinking, I can't say no. Like, my baby can't impact me going out to see my friends. Like, it was that internal pressure I applied to myself.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a lot to say on that, all about valuing motherhood and everything. So, but I know that I'll end up going in a million tangents. So then, yeah, the next thing would be learning to say no, which is related, right? And it's not easy to do, particularly when you haven't had to before. And I think this goes to show just what a vulnerable situation mothers are in when they first have their first baby, and ongoing, in that we have been trained to be good women, don't let anyone else down, do what you can to make everyone else happy and forego your own needs. But suddenly you've got a baby who's got needs as well, and they need rest just as much as you. So you have to learn to say no for the benefit of you and your baby. And there are ways of doing that without sounding like a bitch. And I think that's what we're all worried about. When we say no, we're going to sound like, you know, let those other people down. But when you're saying yes to things that you can't manage, you're saying no to yourself. And I think that that's, learning to say no is really important.
I think that comes with practice as well. When you first have a baby, as you said, it's all such newfound territory. And I wonder whether you need to sort of experience it in order to be able to then learn to say no. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can't really explain it. You just have to experience what it's like to overcommit and then realise that you can't actually continue to do that. But having said that, I think that there is then kindness. We need to be kind to ourselves. We need to have really self-compassion. And it's really hard when you realise, hang on a second, I suddenly can't do all the things. I can barely feed myself and make sure that I've had a shower, let alone get myself presentable to go and see a friend or whatever. So having kindness and compassion for that goes for anything, even if you aren't living that slow life. I think if we want to value ourselves as mothers and what we do, then it's really important to be kind to ourselves. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So, yeah, I think it's just remembering that.
Absolutely. Oh, we've talked a lot, haven't we, in terms of that pregnant and newborn stage, and it covers so many different broad topics. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And as for rest, I think that we think of rest as like sleeping at night and maybe having a nap sometimes in the day if we're really, really tired. But I would like to offer up an expanded view of rest To me, rest is that managing your time, like honoring your time. So this means that when you have Sunday afternoon at home, it's saying no to things so that you can have that time at home. And rest is like preparing yourself for the week ahead so that you're not stressed, so that you're not feeling overwhelmed each day. So preparing yourself like for your future self. It's when you are around at home, pottering at home, making school lunches or whatever, you provide opportunities for connection with your family. And that is really important as well. So to me, that's rest as well. Rest is doing things like, it's really luxurious to like sit down and read a book or do a puzzle. Rest can be like switching off your phone and saying, I'm not going to engage in that, or I'm not going to read the news because I need a break. So if you've been at the computer all day doing work or whatever, rest is going for a walk because it's taking a break from the thing that you've been doing all the time. So to me, rest is a way of life, and it's not something that only certain few people can achieve. Like if you work full time and you've got 3 kids and, you know, you've got sport on the weekend and stuff, doesn't mean that you can't have a restful life.
I love that. It's a different perspective, isn't it? Like you might have 2, 3 kids running around, but you could still lie on the couch with them and read a book, or make, as you said, make a lunchbox together or bake a cake together. And yeah, I love that.
And getting them involved with household stuff. Like who says that they can't help you hang out the washing or whatever? And some kids, a lot of kids absolutely love being involved in whatever mum's doing.
Actually, one of the best purchases I made this year was a Dyson stick vacuum cleaner that my 3-year-old, she was only 2 at the time, my 2-year-old uses it so well. It's light enough for her to lift and move around the house, and she will vacuum my house. Not very well, but it's awesome.
Oh, you've got to take those times when they're not very good at things and let them practice and be bad at it so that they get good. And that is what it is, right? It is about taking the time to do those things. Like we're so focused on finding the most convenient things or the most convenient options, but actually I find it really restful to take my time to cook a lovely meal at night and getting the kids involved or whatever. To me, that feels really luxurious. It sort of says to my nervous system, you've got lots of time because I've taken the time. And, school run, get home, do all of that. It's family time then. And, yeah, I mean, not everyone, I realise some people don't get home until right at dinner time, and that may not be for you, but find ways that you can do that, to take those things that you do and take your time to do them well, or to do them in a way that feels restorative, basically.
Yeah, I love it. Would you say that's probably your one biggest tip, parting words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think so. Well, my parting words of wisdom is that as mothers, society doesn't value the things that mothers do, but we forget that we are society. And so we need to value what mothers do and the importance of that stuff that our kids are going to remember us by. And it is that small stuff about like cooking dinner together and things that they will remember. And so when we value that, we are instilling our values to our kids. We're valuing what we do so that we know that we deserve to take a break and have rest when we need to as well. And I think that that's probably my parting words of wisdom, is to value what you do so that you can value it.
I love it. So tonight I'm going to involve the kids in my cooking tonight.
Great.
Going to get home from school and not do anything. My parting words of wisdom would be around the fact that I feel women are often really want to lose their baby weight once they've had a baby. They want to get strong again. They want to get back to running quickly. And my advice would be just to slow down, because you've got the rest of your life to get fit again once you've had a baby. But it's really those first few weeks and months where this is your chance for your body to physically heal and rejuvenate and recover and restore. There's no rush to do anything too much too soon, and you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So I always say to my new mums, you know what, you've got the rest of your life to get fit if you want to, but really let's just pull it back in these first 6 to 12 weeks and rest. Rest in my sense and your sense, which I like your sense of resting. Rest physically and emotionally.
And that's right. You've got the rest of your life. Like, take each moment and enjoy where you are. And don't worry about the FOMO of the future. Just do the thing that you're doing.
Lovely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me.
You too. Right, Rochelle, can you tell all my listeners how they can find you?
Yeah, so my website is howtoliveslow.com, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and Clubhouse at How to Live Slow. Very easy. And I'm also on Apple iTunes and Spotify as well. The podcast is called How to Live Slow as well.
Fantastic. So thank you so much. It was so lovely to chat today.
It was, yes. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. I guess we could have chatted a lot longer.
Great. Well, say bye to everyone on Instagram now and podcasting. If you've been listening to us, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Bye. And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Rochelle at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And also don't forget, if you're pregnant, to register for the free 5-day event, 5 days, 5 ways to prepare for labour, which is kicking off on the 1st of March. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.